Following content is provided strictly for your education and information purposes only. I am a licensed public adjuster here in the state of Texas. License number is 3331702. I am not your adjuster. I'm not your public adjuster. Unless you have a signed written contract in place as required under Texas Insurance Code 4102, nothing said on this content podcast should be taken as specific claim advice for your situation. Every claim is different. Every policy is different. If you are an insured in Texas, you must be under formal contract with a licensed public adjuster for representation. Without that contract, I cannot and do not represent you. Good morning to all of you who have just joined me. Chime in at any time. Again, I'm having a little bit of audio difficulty. It looks like I can't hear myself in my headset, so not going to be really any reason to have that. All right, so to finish on, the information shared here is general knowledge based on my experience in adjusting and construction. It claims handling. It is not legal advice, nor is it a substitute for retaining your own licensed public adjuster or legal counsel. By listening to this podcast, you understand and agree that no adjuster-client relationship is being formed. This content is to educate, empower, and shine a light on the claims process, nothing more. If you want actual representation on your claim, you must enter into a written contract with a licensed public insurance adjuster in the state of Texas. So that satisfies any legal issues that we would have. Again, thank you for all those that are joining me now. Just so you know, I can't hear myself in my headset, so we will keep going. Again, my name is Kenneth Avans. I'm a licensed public adjuster here in the state of Texas. I've been running claims now for over a decade. I worked for the carriers for a long time, doing different little, I was a staff adjuster as well, out on the floor. So I've got a few experiences. I've been trained. I've been out in the field. I ran claims from New Jersey to Nebraska. And like I said, hopefully my son will be joining us here in a little while. But good morning. Sit back, get your coffee, and let's have a little chat. Let me see if I can educate you on how some of the process works. Again, I got 20 years in construction before I was an adjuster, so I was very versed in construction knowledge, and I was really surprised when I went to work for some of the carriers at the I mean, for lack of a better term, they try to train their people. They really do. But there's not a lot of substitution for real life experience, unfortunately, in running claims. For example, when Mexico City Beach, Florida was wiped off the map for as far as we could see was just foundations. So in particular, it was a different process. So every storm is different. Every policy is different. Pretty much every event's different. You can't look at them all the same. You have to take at them at a different context. Okay, so like I said, we're going to shine a light on some things here as far as how this is go. This is a serious business, but we're going to try and bring a little bit of comedy and a little bit of humor. Let's be honest, dealing with the insurance company can be like watching clown cars at the circus, man. I mean, they just keep piling them in, and the different reasons why they want to exclude you, and the different reasons why they don't want to, pay or the fine print in the policy that says that they don't owe. These are the things that we're trying to address and educate you on. So that's where we're going to go this morning. Claims Wars is all about that. We want to shine a light on the nonsense and to arm you with the truth. Please reach out, anybody that's joining us, and just say hi. Let me know that you can hear me. That maybe you don't like my background. This is the war room for now. I have a couple things going on. We're trying to. It's funny because I'm in construction, so we're finishing up my office. As you can see, it's under construction. But anyway. So we're going to kind of go into a couple things. I'm going to educate you on knowing your exclusions. The scariest words in the English language roughly are "we need to talk." The second scariest is the policy does not cover this. The big one lately that I run across is the cosmetic exclusions on metal roofs. Storm depths to your roof. Still sheds water, but it looks like a golf ball. Got all them little dents all over it. Carrier says it's cosmetic damage only, no coverage. They've excluded that. What are exclusions? Again, thank you for who all is joining me. I do appreciate it. Define exclusions. Exclusions are wear and tear, flood, earth movement, cosmetic. Carriers can use them to shift risk back to their owners. That's exactly what they're doing. Is after your deductibles and what have you, they're shifting that back to you. Basically, exclusions are the fine print assassins. They're silent, they're hidden, and they're waiting for your worst day to jump out and ruin it. I mean, it really is. They usually put them deep down in the policy, and it's not somewhere where it's easy to find. They'll have it recorded somewhere that they went over it with you, and that you've been told, you've been explained these exclusions. They'll have that, and it'll be a year, 2 years prior, and you won't have reviewed. And they send you your policy. Most people don't understand. They send you the little contract every year, and that resets everything every year. So it doesn't matter if you've been with them for 20 years or you've been with them for 30 years or however long you've been with them. The fact of the matter is that every year it starts anew. Okay, so if you're filing a claim, it might as well be brand new year. Okay, so I live out in the hill country in Texas, and mostly we don't get hit with a lot of storms. We get hit with a lot of hail. Wind is not as big a deal, but hail happens to be a big deal. Um, Most of the time we have a lot. We had a storm here recently, and as far as I can see, there's a lot of roofs, a lot of metal roofs in particular, throughout the hill country that have been damaged, and they're not being repaired at this point in time. Metal roofs are very expensive. There's not a lot of options, to with a metal roof. There are some, but there's not a lot short of tearing it off and putting it back on. And the insurance company's looking at it saying, "Hey, you've got dents in it, but it's not functionally damaged. It's cosmetic only." Um, that's code for we don't want to pay for this. We absolutely positively do not want to pay for this. Okay, so you have ways that you can work around this, and it's not that you can work around it, but you have ways to fight this. Okay, you can get experts out there, show that the long-term impacts that have happened are going to cause the damage. You can challenge the vague wording that they're going to use, and then you can. The biggest thing is to check your endorsements on your policy to see if you have that cosmetic exclusion. Usually, what they'll do is it'll be along the lines of something that, hey, we're going to give you a discount. Okay, we're going to discount your insurance policy if you because you have a roof that is resistant. It's metal, or it's a 40 or 50-year shingle. It's resistant to hail, so we're going to give you a discount. And that, a lot of times, I can't say always, can be code for the 50, 60, $100 a year we're going to save you in your premiums. When the hail hits your roof, they're going to say, "Well, we don't owe for that. You have an exclusion," and that's where that is going to go. Your options at that point in time is now, before the storm hits, I would get with your agent and just see if you have that sort of exclusion. I mean, have the talk with them specifically. Go out there and say, "Hey, do I have an exclusion from if this gets hit with hail? Am I going to be covered? Are you going to walk away from me at this point in time?" That's going to be the thing you're going to know. You need to check your policy language if you can. Most public adjusters like myself can't speak to you about your policy unless there was an event, unless you think you have a claim. If you think you have a claim, you can reach out to a public adjuster. And at that point in time, they'd be more than happy, a lot of them, to go out and see what you got going on, review your policy, and go over, answer any questions for you have at that time. If you would like me in the state of Texas, my phone number is 830-353-2969. I'll give that to you again. I am licensed in the state of Texas at this point in time. The phone number is 830-353-2969. My name is Kenny Avans. I am the claim defender. So you can, a lot of times I would take pictures of your house. I mean, most people are proud of their home. Get pictures of the roof so you can show that there is no damage at this point in time. This was taken, before Christmas, or this was taken at 4th of July. We were out in the yard, and just get a couple of close-ups so that way you have it. like I said, the rule of thumb when they say this is cosmetic damage, it doesn't matter if it's your roof or it's your gutters or whatever. What that means is we don't want to cut a check for this. We do not feel we owe for this, and we absolutely positively do not want to pay. You need to consider all your endorsements that they gave you, and then the biggest thing is if you have a claim. Generally speaking, as a public adjuster, we our estimates and our what we end up doing is getting on average about 20 to 30% more you pay than what you would get on your own. But it's easier if you call us at the beginning. If you call us at the beginning before you've got the denial, before the adjusters came out there and look, and did their investigation, if you were able to do that, that is best. Okay. We can come in pretty much at any time. We'll talk to you and give you the ins and outs as far as uh, what's going on. But like I said, if we can get in on the beginning, a lot of times you can head off anything as far as potential. They haven't said no yet. They're just doing their investigation. So if we go out there and do the investigation with them, it's not always the case. It is absolutely positively not always the case, but it can be easier. I've had it more than not when I meet the adjusters out there and just kind of talk to them. I mean, how long, hey, how long you been doing this? I've been doing it 2 years or I've been doing it 10 years. And if they're 10 years, then I know, I'm dealing with somebody that should have roughly my level of knowledge, and it's easier to point out the actual damage. Because when I say that we get on average 20 to 30% more than what you get on your own, that's just because we know what we're looking for. We're not getting you anything you're not already owed. Everything that we would get you as a public adjuster, everything that we would argue the point for as a public adjuster, is just getting you money that you should have already coming. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe it was an oversight, maybe it was nefarious, but for whatever reason at this point in time, that's what we're doing. So when they get to the cosmetic exclusions, a lot of times if you can call the public adjuster in advance, that will be a lot more to your advantage. All right. A lot of times when you're doing this stuff, they have what's called incomplete documentation, and this one has a tendency to be a big deal. Okay. The insurance company will have a tendency to act like you didn't send them enough paperwork. Okay. They'll tell you, we need, even if you send them, for lack of a better term, I sent you the whole dang Home Depot catalog, man. I mean, dang, there ain't no more parts in there. But I need more information, or I need to do another investigation, or I need to, I'm dealing with that now. I mean, we need to do another investigation. And it's like, wait a minute, hold on. You've already went through the whole process. What do you mean you need to do another investigation? You need to come out there and determine the source. You've already had an adjuster out there. You've already had an appraiser out there. The award's been awarded. Why are you saying you need to go out and do another investigation? Well, we didn't do a proper investigation at that time. And unfortunately, when it comes to investigations, as far as the insurance company letting them do what they need to do, I mean, it's pretty much in your contract that you are required to, comply with any sort of inspection and let them come out. I mean, because the whole thing is to be honest. I mean, let's face it, insurance fraud is not a joke. I've said this before in reference to like your deductible. You have the roofing companies that will go out there, and if there's any roofing companies that are on here, take this information as as useful information. When you tell it, if you tell an insured that you'll absorb their deductible, that is not legal in the state of Texas. I know that for sure. Um, and you're actually, if the insured, the homeowner goes along with it and says, yeah, no, I want, well, you could actually be tied to insurance fraud. And the insurance company, sometimes, a lot of times, not all the time, but they can and ask for proof that you paid your deductible, a check or something at that point in time that says, hey, I've paid this. And if you don't pay that, then they actually can and sometimes will not release your deductible. I mean, not your deductible, I'm sorry, your recoverable appreciation. And that is in their right because it says in your policy that you will pay the deductible. That's basically your skin in the game. I mean, that's how they're keeping everybody involved. You have to pay up this much. They pay up this much. Nobody's going to do this with for no reason. That's the whole point. So the paperwork that they keep sending, they'll keep sending request letters. They'll delay this. They'll delay this. They'll delay this. The biggest thing, the biggest way to fight that is to keep documentation. Your documentation is going to be key. Okay. You're going to want to, the minute you think you have a claim, the minute you think that you're going to need to put something in there to file, photograph it. Start writing down what you did. Okay. We had to call the mitigation company out, for example, for an interior water leak. Okay. The mitigation came out at 9:15 on the 30th. Okay. There was two guys. They had some meters and they were taking tests, and just document the information the best you can. This is going to be one of your best weapons. You're going to want to take pictures of everything you can. I would not rely on the mitigation company to do this for you. I mean, it's in their best interest, but it's not their responsibility. It is yours. And you have what's called duties after the loss. That is something I'll cover in another episode, that are requirements of you. And unless you perform these duties after the loss, the insurance company is not required to pay you anything. And they, at that point in time, as far as they're concerned, they're paying you out of the kindness of their heart because you haven't performed your end of the contract. So they'll keep asking for, all kinds of documentation. We need receipts. We need pictures. We're going to need this. I wish I was kidding about this, but I'm not. Okay. So your thing that you're going to be dealing with is pre-existing damage. A lot of times when it comes to doing the investigation, that's going to be a big battle besides the exclusions. The pre-existing damage. They'll come in, and you're going to hear this a lot whenever they do this. Okay. It's going to be, the investigation has started. So they've come in out there, they've done it, and they're going to say this damage was already there. Or, your roof is really old. You've had this roof. How old is this house? This house was built in 1987. Okay. Well, this is definitely not the original roof because that's 50 years old. But, when did you buy the house? Well, I bought the house, 15 years ago. Well, did you put a new roof on at that time? Well, no, I did not, but we had a storm a couple years later and I did. So, all right. So we're looking at a 13-year-old roof. This roof is old. That doesn't matter when it comes to damage. If your roof is, they can withhold the depreciation. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do as far as, trying to alleviate the pain that they're trying to have in reference to paying the policy out. But just because your roof is old doesn't mean that they don't get to cover it if it gets hit by a wind event or hail event. That is very much still, a viable claim. So the fact that the damage is already there, a lot of times, and this is what I was talking about, if you could have your adjuster there in advance. If your adjuster there is first with them, then we can argue that point on the spot. Okay. And a lot of times what I'll do if I happen to be out there is I'll find mechanical, what they call mechanical damage, or I'll find what they call a heat blister. That's a big one that they'll go to, is they'll go to heat blisters, and I'll walk that with the adjuster and I'll point that out. Okay. This is mechanical. This is not hail damage. Oh no, that's not hail damage. Absolutely not. And so I've established at that point in time that we've got that out of the way. I know what mechanical damage is. I know what a heat blister looks like. I know, here it is. I've actually pointed it out to you on the roof. Okay. Now walk over here with me and let me show you what I am calling damage. And I'll walk them over to it. And I know that the adjusters, they like their 10 square. There's a lot of things that you learn as you get to be a public adjuster that you find out that was not exactly accurate, that you were taught at being a staff adjuster or being a field adjuster. For example, they do a 10 square is what they call it. And it's just a 10 foot by 10 foot square that they mark out on your roof. They'll do it for chalk, and they're looking for, it used to be, I remember at one point in time, it was, 10 or 12 hits in the square, or 8 or 10 hits in the square. If you only had 1 or 2, it wasn't enough damage to right the roof. And what you find out later on down the road is that nowhere in the policy does it say that. It doesn't, there's no 10 square in the policy for that. That's a industry thing. That's a company guidelines type stuff. And that's just not enforceable. As far as a homeowner, you're not privileged to that information. You're unaware that there's got to be a 10 square. There's nowhere in the policy where it reads, it says 10 square. You got to have 8 hits, or you have to have 10 hits for it to be considered a replaceable roof. And so those are things that, as a public adjuster, we go in and we argue those points. How do you tell me that I still can't hear. How do you tell me that that this is not this doesn't count? I've only got one or two hits inside of this 10 square. When if I look on the whole side, maybe I got more, but damage is damage. I mean, that's point blank. If there's damage, it's damaged. And if it was damaged by the event, then there's coverage for it. That's what the policy is. You run into a lot in reference to the wear and tear, and the homeowners. The insurance companies have gotten used to the fact that 50% of the people out there are going to go away just for the simple fact when they say no. You're not covered. No, absolutely, positively not. And the people just go away. They do. They absolutely. They just. Okay. It's almost like as if you're the government came in and said, nope, we're not. This is the law. Okay. Well, what if you found out that the interpretation of the law that you were being given isn't exactly accurate and it's not exactly correct, and that there was, if you'd only known this step or this step, it would have changed the whole outcome. Well, that's what we're doing here at Claim Wars. That is exactly what we're doing here at Claim Wars. Is Claim Wars. My S's run together. I apologize. My Southern background comes out every now and again. So, but that's where they'll get you. Okay, so at that point in time, when you're looking at the wear and tear and the age of the roof, again, that has nothing to do with the damage that was caused by the event. If the event caused the damage, then there is coverage, and it's not. And there's nowhere in the policy it says it has to be 8 hits, or it has to be 10 hits, or it has to be 1 shingle, or it has to be 2 shingles. It's damage. Most people don't realize when they actually start to do a repair on a roof, generally speaking, you have to repair more than that 1 shingle that's damaged. So if, for example, you had 5 shingles on that roof that were damaged and torn or whatever, and a roofer comes up there and has to do a repair, hopefully he can just repair that 1. But he may have to repair 2 in that aspect. He may have to repair 3, and it goes up to 4. And a lot of that is based on the age of the roof. So, for example, if you only had 5 shingles missing on the side of a roof, you could have up to 20 that had to be replaced. Well, now you times that times you got 10 shingles. Now you got possibly up to 40 shingles. Well, it's hard for a roofer to warranty something like that. You just repaired 40 shingles on the side of the slope. And even one of the best roofers out there is going to be looking at that going, the liability is just, may not be worth that. When I'm already replacing 40 shingles, let's just replace the whole slope, which is how it should be done. Now at that point in time. So there's just a lot of things that, we know as adjusters that we've walked through and we've trained with. Another thing that the insurance company likes to do, and it's very common, is what they'll do is they'll do an estimate, and it's, for lack of a better term, it's a lowball estimate, and that's how come we're able to come in and write our estimates at 20 to 30% more. Now, a lot of people say, well, as a public adjuster, we get, generally speaking, 10% of the claim. And so that being said, that seems like a large number based on what the claim is. Well, if I come in and I write 20, 30% more than what you was already there, and then you're having to pay me out of that, a lot of times, most of the time, the 10% that is actually being paid comes directly out of the extra. Now, the insurance companies should be paying that fee. There is, especially in the state of Texas, it says flat out that they are supposed to pay the public adjuster's fee. It's part of the claim. They actually are the causation behind the public adjuster being hired to begin with, because if they paid everything out and the insured thought everything was fair, there would be no reason. They're not even going to entertain. And again, that's why we're here having this topic, because from what I've found is I've got a lot of educated and very wealthy people didn't even know that the public adjuster exists. So, they just don't feel they have an outlet. So you've been trained over the years, they tell you what to do. What are your options after they say no? What are your options after, they've said, well, no, it's below deductible. And that's a big one. The below deductible gets to be, that's where these low estimates come in. And that this goes into the, excuse me, the next subject is they do the low estimates. They didn't get everything in there. And then all of a sudden your deductible, was $5,000. Well, it was a water claim, for example. The mitigation came in, and it wasn't a big water claim. So the mitigation comes in, and they only had to do $1,000, $2,000 worth of work, which was not a lot. And that's a low ball estimate. So know that as far as mitigation is concerned, that's definitely low. You come in, they go, okay, we got to take out the cabinets, do some walls, this and that and the other. And now all of a sudden, you're at $4,500 with a $5,000 deductible, and it's, well, there's no payout. There's no, and so now you're on your own. Now what you find out later when you go to file a claim later on down the road is the insurance company considers that paid. That was paid. Okay. They sent a guy out. They wrote up an estimate. Their estimate came out to be $4,500. Your deductible is $5,000. There's no money to give you, but as far as they're concerned, that claim was reconciled. It was closed, and now it's up to you to fix that. If you ever try to file a claim on that again, that will not be covered. They'll tell you flat out, it wasn't repaired, and that's a big thing. Once you file a claim, if you don't repair it, okay, it's not insured anymore. Even if you're paying your premiums, it wasn't repaired. They paid to have it repaired, and so it's not insured. So you're still paying your premiums out on, something that you're not going to be able to claim. Okay, so we all use a lot of the same estimating softwares. We do. We use them all the time. Xactimate is one. Symbility is another. Depending on what carrier you're at, I've used both very extensively. Some people argue one's lower than the other. And what I've learned in my experience is it's based on your knowledge as far as construction. That helps the biggest thing. And then any sort of class as a public adjuster, taking anything on appraisals and learning. The more you learn, if you're not educating yourself, constantly, then you're going to fall behind. That's just how it goes, either in construction or in the insurance industry. I mean, that's just a fact. You're never going to know it all. For as long as I've been doing this, and I've built city halls and hospitals, my expertise is primarily in concrete and roofing. If you were to call me as an expert, that's what I've spent most of my construction world doing. So I've had a couple of these cosmetic exclusions in particular. I'll give you a real life story that happened to me. Actually, I've had a couple in particular. One was a residential, and they got hit with 2.5-inch hail. 2.5-inch hail. That is hail on a level that no matter what it hits, it's going to leave a mark. And the crazy thing about that one was they absolutely paid for the roof. They said flat out, no problem, we're going to pay for the roof. You could see the marks. And my end of that was, at that point in time, they probably should have paid for the decking too, because 2.5-inch hail is making an impact on a 3-tab shingle, which is what it was, on a level that's just ridiculous. I mean, it is almost penetrating. I mean, it is plowing into the asphalt shingle and burying it into the wood. Needless to say, though, they had gutters on the house, and they had some windows, and they had a French door in the back, and they had a little wood shed that held some for keeping the wood dry. And so they were paying for the roof, and the rest of not our problem. It's not the gutters. That's cosmetic damage. That's cosmetic. It's not. Well, actually, they don't think they actually say cosmetic. I don't think they call it damage. It is cosmetic, and they go to that cosmetic exclusion quickly. But they'll flat out tell you that And I'm sitting here looking. I've got an actual on the outside of the gutter, which is one of the stronger points where it actually comes out on the lip. I've got a 2-inch dent. It almost V'd the metal on the outside, where, I mean, that had to have been a 2-inch, 2.5-inch smack. And I got a close-up picture of it, and I'm going, how is this cosmetic? I mean, if that gutter, catches the rain and water can overflow right here. There's nothing cosmetic about it. But the funny thing was, I wasn't even arguing excuse me, let me back up. They were saying that that's not functional damage. That was just cosmetic. And I'm sitting here going, well, one, I don't know how that's not considered functional damage, because if the gutter fills up to a certain point, it's actually not going to work anymore. The water's going to come out in a spot it's not supposed to. So this is not cosmetic damage. This is functional damage. But I wasn't even arguing functional damage. What I was arguing was indemnification. I've got not just that dent, I've got dents all the way around this man's house, all the way on every gutter. And gutters, $3, $4, $5, sometimes $6, $7,000. So we're not talking about arguing functionality. We were talking about arguing just flat out indemnification. And so when I'm telling the adjuster, I said, look, I sent you a flat out picture of showing that these are damaged. This is not, this is, and she said, well, I've sent you a copy of the cosmetic and marring exclusion. I said, I get that. I said, but again, this is not cosmetic damage. I kid you not, if I did not come back and tell me point blank that for the gutters to be considered damaged functionally, they had to have a hole in them. And this goes to show you the different levels of experience that you get based on what adjuster you get and how they were trained. And they're not going to be bad people. They're just more, hopefully, they're doing the best they can. They're doing the best job they can. They're just doing they've been trained. They've been told this is what it is. A lot of people, outside of being trained, don't actually go and do and get your own research and do your own knowledge. The boss told me that this is how it works, so this is what I do. So, she's telling me that the gutter had to have a hole in it to be functional. I said, wait. I said, first off, I said, can you, tell me in a policy where it specifically states that a gutter is only considered functionally damaged when there's an actual physical hole to it. And there was a little bit of a silence, and I went, I'll stop you, ma'am. I said, it's not there. Okay, so it's not there. But I'm just trying to point out the inaccuracies of your statement that a hole in the gutter is not the only thing that would cause it to be functional damage. I mean, for example, if a tree fell on the house and it just dented it or bent it really good, I mean, that would be also functional damage. But again, I was not even arguing that point. What I was arguing was I've got a house that's not very old. It's very good condition. And now all the way around this house, I've got these huge, massive dents in the gutter that's going to devalue this home. And you're not allowed to do that in my, is what I was telling them. So that cosmetic exclusion can be a big deal. I mean, it can be a big deal. I mean, the gentleman was looking at, somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000 of his home that was not going to be covered. Absolutely, positively, they were not going to cover it. Needless to say, we got it all covered. We went in and we argued the point, and we pointed out to them very specifically where the mistakes were made, and they conceded. Fortunately, on that one, unfortunately, the insurance company doesn't always have to concede. That is where it gets to this podcast, because what I've found is there's not a lot of places for people to go and actually ask questions or even reach out and say, hey, I don't think this is right. Is there somebody that can verify that what I'm being told is correct? I mean, it's just not. You can't talk about policy to an insured unless you are the insurance company, a licensed public insurance adjuster, or an insurance attorney. So you can't read somebody's policy and then tell them what it says. And then what they've got is they've made the policy so complex. At this point in time, if you look it up on your little AI software, more than likely it's going to tell you that you have to have a master's level education to even understand your policy. Well, I don't, I'm an older guy, so I probably should have a master's level education. I do not. I spent most of my career, as I stated earlier, if you give me a blueprint and a 60-man crew, and a $10 million budget, I can build you a huge, city hall. I can build things, with the right manpower. I can read those plans. That's what I do. Okay. But the fact of the matter is the insurance company, it's not all about that. For them, they don't have that. All they want to know is, does the policy say it's covered? Can they go through your policy and look? And they do that when you first call in. Okay. When you first call in, they'll start going, when did it happen? A lot of times with water claims, whatever, they like to do a recorded statement. Same thing with a fire. And they're doing that mainly because a lot of the water claims and the fire claims, they go to litigation. And so when it goes to litigation, you're going to want everything documented backwards and forward. Hence, that was where I was talking earlier about you want to get a public adjuster involved as soon as possible, because they will document. If you get a public insurance adjuster involved, they will start documenting right away everything. They record a lot of conversations, as I stated. So the gentleman with the gutters and the windows and what have you, they didn't pay for everything. I think they didn't pay for the damage to the roof shed, which again was funny because it was damaged. I mean, it was covered under other structures, but at that point in time, when I talked to the insured, he was satisfied with what he was getting. He was going to be able to fix what he wanted to do, which was the result. That's what we wanted. Like I said, and I didn't get him anything he didn't already have coming. He had it coming anyway. But like I said, the insurance company has made it so that it is illegal for somebody to talk to you about your policy and give you any sort of advice. I mean, they just can't. A public adjuster, even if we're talking to you about your claim and going through your policy and what have you, it has to be related to a claim. Um, I can't just offer services to uh, review your policy and tell you where your errors are, because that's not legal. Okay, so that's just not something that we're able to do. The different situations, different policies, different states, you're going to have different reasons to cover different things. I mean, for example, as I stated, here where I live at in the hill country of Texas, we don't deal with a lot of hurricanes, so a hurricane deductible is not going to bother me. They don't come this far inland. Tornadoes, on the other hand, high wind deductibles, that's a whole nother story. And that'll be another thing that they do. It would be a high wind deductible as to a hurricane deductible. So when I talked about it being the fact that it was that you had to have hole in the gutter, it was like, okay, so does this hole in the gutter, does it have to be Swiss cheese? But it does not. It does not. Um, so as I was talking to you earlier about when you actually file a claim, and most people are unaware, you have to perform what's called duties after the loss, and that's again buried into your policy. You need to, if you're trying to file a claim without a public adjuster, again, I would not recommend that. If it's a small claim, yes, but if you're getting over $10,000 at 20 to 30% on average, getting you that additional funds, in my opinion, it would be worth it to go ahead and uh, inquire about hiring a public adjuster. And again, as I stated earlier, if you would like to reach out to me, my phone number is 830-353-2969 in the state of Texas. Outside of the state of Texas, I would have to refer you. I happen to know a lot of adjusters out there. I know a lot of contractors, roofers, and that will be coming up in the next episodes. We will be doing this Claim Wars every Wednesday at 6 a.m. And as we get to going, I will have adjusters, roofers, contractors, other public insurance adjusters just coming in and flat out telling their stories as far as what happens. We have dozens of them. I mean, it's pretty much how this came about. Is me and my son, who is also an insurance adjuster, um, dabbles in business as well. We'd get to talking about claims. We don't necessarily talk specifics or, but I was on the roof and this adjuster, was telling me that all this is heat blisters and I can feel the dimple, for example. That was how I showed my son to identify hail on a roof. When it hits on a roof, if you think it's hail, you literally can just rub your finger across it and you can feel the the little dimple. And that there's no doubt at that point in time that there's only a couple things that cause that. Ball peen hammer, and I would not do insurance fraud. I can tell you right now, that is not something that you want to deal with. That gets very ugly very quickly, and it's highly illegal. You can get in a lot of trouble for it. So as I stated, we'll be doing real life stories of things that have actually happened to us. I've been doing this for a long time, and as I stated, when my son, we were out in Nebraska, we were running some hailstorms out there. That was the first time I ever actually saw livestock. They had gotten hit out there in Nebraska. This was about 2-3 years ago. It was 3.5 inch hail, and there was actual cows that had been, that weren't able to get into cover, and they had been affected. You're driving around, and I mean, the birds, it was the craziest thing to see. It literally looked like a war zone, kind of, in reference to the devastation. And the different storms are different. That's why I said every policy is different. So a lot of times, as I can't stress enough to, if the claim's 10, 12, $20,000, reach out to a public adjuster in your area, in your state, and see if there's something they can do to help you. Unfortunately, I think there's 10,000 of us across the country, so there's not a bunch of us. Most of us are willing to, help. That's what we're here to do. We're trying to indemnify the insured. I mean, in my case in particular, and same thing with my son. After working for so long and not liking how I was having to make my coverage decisions, I crossed over and I went to where as a public insurance adjuster, we are the only ones that do not work for the insurance company. And most of us spent a long time working for the insurance company. Um, so at that point in time, that's how we got to where we are. And like I said, I did not like the fact I can't hear. I think my son was actually coming on live, but I can't hear him. Let me see. Not unless you go under a licensed contract with a public adjuster. Um, I'm not representing you. This is just to inform you as to some of the antics that go on with the insurance company. Like I said earlier, a lot of times what you get back, it's like, am I literally watching a clown car at the circus with what they're telling me? As I stated earlier about you know, the holes in the gutter. What the gutter's got to be look like Swiss cheese before it's covered? I don't think so. That's just not how it works. I mean, we pay our insurance regularly, and then like I said, the biggest thing that I run across with people that gets me for the most part is when they say, "I've had my insurance for 30 years," or "I've had my insurance for 20 years, and I've never filed a claim, and I can't believe I'm being treated this way." And unfortunately, that is just that is the way it goes. Like I said, it doesn't matter that you've been with them for 20 years. It doesn't matter that you've been with them for 30 years. What that matters is that they sent you a policy at the beginning of the year for you to read and understand. Okay, there's a whole nother section I'll go into in a future episode about how you're being charged probably on your premiums a little bit more than what you should. They go off the property value of what to be totally honest with you, I'm not exactly sure where they get that information. Is it from the tax assessor? Is it from the real estate? But I had a personal issue with that over the last couple of years, where when the property value doubled due to the uh, the COVID and what have you, and all of a sudden I get a renewal notice, and they want my insurance is going up. Well, when my insurance premium go up and they raise, for example, if you went from 200 to $400,000 worth of insurance, your deductible goes up. Okay, my deductible is 1%. So if it was $2,000 to begin with, and now they're saying that my property's worth $400,000, now my deductible is $4,000, and if it's 2%, it gets worse. If you have a hurricane deductible, now you could be at 5%. So those are just pitfalls that you want to look out for. This is stuff that you could ask your agent. This is stuff that you could actually question. If you had a claim at that point in time, you could inquire to the adjuster, and see if there's, if they had any sort of, they're going to be, careful. We are held to a different standard as far as public insurance adjusters. So we have to be very, legal, make sure that everything's up and up. You have statutes that you have to follow. You do not want to bend any statutes. You don't want to be involved in any of that. So that's just how we're going to go. We're going to bring this, like I said, we're going to bring this to you live every week at 6 a.m. on Wednesday. So like I said, when you get your claim filed out, the duties after the loss are the things. Mitigation is a big one. Mitigation is something that you have to do right away. And for those of you that don't understand mitigation, that means you have to basically stop any more damage from happening. Okay, so for example, I'm 80 years old. I'm not climbing a roof. So what you have to do is you have to be able to show that you did your best efforts to prevent anything else from being happened. So I've called 6, roofers to come out and fix this, and nobody has came yet. But I've got a couple of appointments. So those are things that you would want to do. Your proof of loss is something that you're probably not going to be, fully aware of. That's going to be something that you're probably going to need a public adjuster for. They're going to understand what that means and what they need to do as far as filling it out. That's basically stating what happened. If there's an estimate that goes with it, there's photos that go with it, and then you send it up and you're telling them this is what you feel that is owed. Okay. Okay. So, like I said, at that one point in time, the game that they have is they invent these little rules, and I don't want to say that they invent the rules, but they have their little guidelines. Okay, and they tell you these little things, and they're hoping that you're going to buy into it. Okay, Texas law in particular makes it very clear the insurers can't misrepresent the policy terms. Okay, they are the experts on the policy. For them to intentionally misrepresent the policy, is against the law. At this point in time, I'm trying to determine how much they're actually being enforced as far as, because we saw that, like I said, that one thing up in Florida with Senator Josh Hawley and what have you, putting them on the floor. But I don't, I'm trying to determine what came out of that, as far as what was positive for, policyholders across the country. Because let's face it, we're all required to have homeowners insurance unless you can self-insure, which most of us cannot. So the proof of loss is something that you have to, you have to file. It's photos and assessments, and without that, you really don't have a leg to stand on. I mean, you just don't. Okay, like I said, what they want to do is they want to tell you that basically it's cosmetic damage or it's wear and tear, so it's not covered. We don't have to. Bottom line, we don't have to pay it. It's not part of your coverage. That's just how they go. All right. Well, at this point in time, generally speaking, I was going to have this open. I've got about 10 more minutes. I haven't gotten any questions. I've left the chat open, I believe. Again, I was having technical difficulties this morning. So if you have any questions or you're just enjoying the show, please let me know. I would, like I said, I want to go ahead and we're going to do this every week. We're going to go over things that says, can I file if the storm was 18 months ago? That's kind of some of the questions that we, generally speaking, no, you cannot. You have 12 months from the time of the event. Now, during certain extreme events, hurricanes and this, that, and the other, things can get extended. That is also, state of emergencies. We had one in the hill country not too long ago. The flood was a big deal. And that was declared a state of emergency, which at that point in time, you won't have any public insurance adjusters out there advertising. We don't go out into those areas. It's against the law, actually, for us to. Thank you. I've got a gentleman that's liked the show. I appreciate that. Like I said, we'll be coming to you every Wednesday, 6 a.m. I'm going to produce these over and over again. Like I said, I've got at least a dozen people already that are anxious to come on and tell their piece of what's happened. I've got some very, very skilled independent adjusters, public adjusters. I can't imagine I'm going to have too many independent adjusters coming on. The insurance company will, the different companies, they don't like for you to, blow open the door on what's going on. They want you to, like I said, when they say no, go away. We said no, you're not covered. And unfortunately, what most people find is a lot of this is luck of the draw. I mean, did your claim land on a desk of somebody who's well trained, and they should be, but unfortunately, my experience is that a lot of them are not. A lot of them are not. I find that very young, very inexperienced, just trying to do the best they can. You've got a lot that are very old. They've been with the company forever. But the problem there is they know exactly what the company is expecting them to do. And they know if they don't do what's expected of them exactly, it affects their bonuses. It affects their raises. And a lot of them, like I said, they're not doing anything on purpose. They don't know that what they're doing is not necessarily correct. Okay. They're told this is the company guidelines. The company guidelines, if you look, everybody out there listening, if you look in your policy, I've yet to see company guidelines listed. Well, if they're not listed in your policy, they can't be enforced under contract. Okay. This is a contract that you have with the insurance company. When you look at it like that, I mean, is there any other industry out there where the man who owes you the money sends his man out to tell you how much they're going to pay you? And that's what you're dealing with at this point in time. There's no other industry I know of in the country that works like that. You have a contract. This is the deal. You call, and literally, I kid you not. And it wasn't always that way. In the beginning, when the insurance industry came out, the insurance company didn't have their own adjusters. Public adjusters were all they were. You came out as a public adjuster, you assessed the damage, you sent it up, and the insurance company paid it out. And along the lines, the insurance company has gotten their own army of adjusters, their own army of engineers, their own army of everybody. Hey, man, I appreciate the fact that you found this one's damaged, but we have another one that wasn't even addressed. And so these are things that you have to deal with. And this comes back, I mean, unless you know what you're looking for, you're just not going to know. All right. So today we have looked at what your cosmetic exclusions are. We have looked at looking into your policy. We've looked at hiring a public adjuster. If your claim's definitely more than $10,000, it might want to be something you want to reach out to. I got a little beep going on here. Inactivity detected on your live studio. Why is there inactivity? Shouldn't be inactivity. So unable to verify. That's all right. Says we're going to end in 4 minutes, and that's what we're going to do. So audio. Oh, that's what I haven't been able to hear out of my headset today. So just so you know, hopefully this is all turned out very well, because as I stated, I had a little bit of technical difficulties this morning I did not expect. Again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I am Kenny Avans. I am the claim defender. My phone number is 830-353-2969. I am licensed here in the state of Texas. I would be more than happy to represent you. I work for a firm here locally in Bernie. If you are outside of the state of Texas, I would be more than happy to refer you to any of my colleagues that I know across the country. Next week, I do believe we will have my son on as well, so we will go back and forth with a little live banter. I didn't get any live chats today. I didn't get any questions. I do appreciate the thumbs up that you could hear me and that this was going off. Again, this is Claim Wars. I am Kenny Avans, the claim defender. My phone number is 830-353-2969. If you're in the state of Texas, reach out to me. If you feel you need representation, I would be more than happy to talk to you about what you have going on. If you're outside of the state of Texas, I will be more than happy to try and refer you to a colleague that is licensed in your state. That is all I have for today. It says I've got about 3 minutes left, so I will go into what we're going to do next week. It looks like next week we're going to go over documentation. We're going to go over more of your policy exclusions, more of the damages. I will give you more live stories, different ones at this point in time. I've got one up in Temple where the gentleman, we've had video of the storm blowing down the gates, blowing down the fence, and yet there was no damage to the house or anything else. It's just the craziest thing how sometimes that they operate. Unable to verify. This is the craziest thing. So I've got an audio issue. Oh, gotta love it when you do live. Until next week, this is Kenny Avans. I am the claim defender. This is Claim Wars. Join us next week, 6 a.m. on Wednesday. we will go over this some more. Have a wonderful week, y'all. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Again, my phone number is 830-353-2969. If you have a claim, I would love to talk to you about it. Real quick, I'll go over this last time since I have 1 minute left. The following content was provided for educational and information purposes only. I am a licensed public adjuster. I'm not your adjuster. Unless you have a signed contract in the state of Texas, nothing said on this podcast should be taken as specific claim advice. Every claim is different. Every policy is different. If you are insured in Texas, you must be under formal contract with the licensed public adjuster for representation. Without that contract, I cannot and do not represent you. The information shared here is general knowledge based on my experience in the adjusting and construction and claims handling process. It is not legal advice, nor does it substitute for you retaining your own licensed public insurance adjuster or legal counsel. By listening to this podcast, you understand and agree that no adjuster client relationship is being formed. This content is to educate, empower, and shine the light on the claims process. Nothing more. If you want actual representation on your claim, you must enter into a written contract with the licensed public adjuster in the state of Texas. And again, if you would like to reach out to me, my phone number is 830-353-2969. I am the claim defender. You have watched the first episode of Claim Wars. I do appreciate everybody watching. Reach out to me again if there's anything I can do for you. Until next week.